Hola, buenas tardes. Buenas tardes a todos, gracias por venir, gracias por la puntualidad. Hoy tenemos de nuevo un ponente internacional. De nuevo tenemos un experto internacional, un profesor que con su presencia peralta la calidad científica de la Universidad de Juan Carlos. Y en este caso tenemos a la profesora Fabienne Jaogu. La profesora Fabienne Jagou es profesor titular senior con habilitación en la Escuela Francesa de Extremo Oriente. Es miembro del Centro de Investigación Nacional del Instituto de Estudios de Asia Oriental de Lyon, de la Universidad de Lyon. Enseña en la Escuela Superior Normal de Lyon. Su investigación principal se basa en el tema de construyendo el nacionalismo en Asia Interior, el empoderamiento de la revolución tibetana a principios del siglo XX. Ha sido también coordinadora del grupo de investigación de momias, estudio y conversación con el Museo de Qing, Chirac, el Museo del Louvre y la Universidad de Estrasburgo, con los objetivos de estudiar a especialistas de diferentes disciplinas para estudiar momias de los maestros budistas taiwaneses y tibetanos. También fue en su momento coorganizador y miembro del Comité Científico de la Asociación Internacional de Estudios Tibetanos y es investigador principal del proyecto Práctica del Budismo Tibetano en Taiwán. La profesora Jaogu, como veis, es una experta en el Tíbet y en el budismo y su influencia en torno al mundo chino y al mismo tiempo en su influencia de este mundo tan teocrático como es el budismo y el mundo tibetano con el Estado chino imperial. Hoy nos va a traer una ponencia de las que escasamente suelen y se pueden ver en España, titulada en español La naturaleza de las relaciones entre los emperadores Qing y los jerarcas tibetanos, un modelo para la búsqueda de un conocimiento mutuo euroasiático. Thank you very much. Merci, Fabienne. Muchas gracias. It's an honor for the Universidad de Juan Carlos that you are here. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Raúl Ramírez Ruiz, for your invitation, and I am very pleased to be here to talk about my main research topic. And I have also to say buenas tardes to a todos. Thank you. And I have also to apologize for my voice, which is a little bit destroyed because of a surgery, but it should come back in a few months, I hope. So thank you very much again to be here, and I will try to be very clear, and as you will see, I will talk about a lot of people, but this is really necessary, I think, if we want to speak about Sino-Tibetan relationship. So I have prepared a PPT to allow you to see all those names, but also all those information. And please, if you agree with it, if you do not understand what I am saying, or if you have any question during the lecture, please interrupt me, and I will do my best for you to understand. Okay, to make you understand. This is okay. Thank you. So this is. Why I am here, not only because I am an expert, of course, but mainly because I want you to understand better the roots of the relationship between Tibet and China. Thank you. Okay, so please, really feel free to ask me questions all along the lecture. So what I will talk about today is the nature of the relationship between Qing emperors and Tibetan Jerarcas, that is called Chogyun in Tibetan, and as a model, and which is related to the topic actually of the series of lectures that you have in this course organized by Professor Ramírez Ruiz. So I have tried to be very pedagogic and also didactic to help you to follow very well the difficulty to understand the Sino-Tibetan relationship. So I will first present the historical background, Then I will define what is a Julian relationship. I mean the spiritual and masterly, spiritual master and their protector relationship. And then I will give some example to let you know how this relationship work in the context of the history. But first, I would like to present, I'm going from a very far I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so I will begin with the broad situation of Asia to make you understand the situation as it was during the Qing dynasty, and then we will go smaller to Tibet and to inner Tibet. And so, as you can see, we have here Tibet at the center of Asia. And you all know that China considered herself to be at the center of Asia, and unfortunately it is not the case if we look at the geographical map. Tibet is at the center of Asia, but actually if I say that, this is what we can see. But at the time of the 18th century, we have several centers. We have one in Tibet, of course, we have another one in Mongolia, and we have still another one in the Manchu Empire. And all these structures are very different from one from the other, and but they managed to communicate and to work together all along the period of the Qing dynasty. So we are now going to the map of China, and just to let you see that, can you see my, no, you cannot see. Just to, as you can see, Tibet border are very obvious because of the territory, which is limited by mountains all along its territory. This is also a nice way to look at how much Tibet is big compared to inner China. And just to give you an idea, Tibet's dimensions equals 7 times French territory. And then we are going inside Tibet, and in Tibet we have 3 main regions. Central Tibet, which is considered as the political and cultural center of Tibet, with Lhasa, the capital, but also with all the administrative structure of the Tibetan government based in Lhasa. You have another region, which is Kham, which is divided between various polities, and we'll come back if we have time about it later, to talk about it later. And then we have Amdo, which is close to Mongolia, and which is a mix of various ethnies, actually. Not only Chinese, not only Tibetan, but also Mongol and Mongols. So this is how Tibet was till 1959. So I'm going just to give you also some bases related to the history of Tibet, which are also very important to understand the modern situation. So we have first a Tibetan empire, a very powerful one. Then we have a period of fragmentation, and then we have another period in the 13th and 14th century, with the Mongol being the landholder, can we say, of Tibet. And then we have another fragmentation, a central Tibet ruled by 2 lay families, and then we've got the Gelugpa school, so the Dalai Lama reign, which began at the middle of the 17th century. Just also, I will not go through each period, don't be afraid. I just want to show you for the Tibetan Empire or Tibetan Kingdom, it depends of which historian talk about this period. The Tibet was very well armed, as big armies, and its reign was very spread all over Inner Asia. This is what you can see here, and on this map also, with really Tibet having an influence, but a military influence at that time, on a lot of places in Inner Asia, going to actual Xinjiang, for example, but also going to Chang'an, that the Tibetan army took during 2 weeks. So that is considered as a big military victory by the Tibetans. It is always said in the historian work. Okay, you have a good idea. Okay, yeah. And then, the first king was Songtsen Gampo, and is also very important compared with the Dalai Lama reign. He is the 33rd king of Tibet, and he has 2 residencies, one in the west of Tibet and the other one in Lhasa, that would become Lhasa at a later time. And you will see later why it is important, especially for all the myths that surrounded the Dalai Lama posture and Dalai Lama institution. Songtsen Gampo is also very important because he married several wives, and he had 2, one Nepalese and one Chinese, who brought Buddhist images. One from Nepal and the other one from China, and we consider these 2 images as being at the origin of the adoption of Buddhism by the Tibetans. And if you go to Lhasa today, you will find 2 temples, one for the statue brought by the Nepalese wife of Songtsen Gampo, and the other one brought by the Chinese wife of Songtsen Gampo. So that is to say that these wives still remain very important for China, of course, and you can find many representations of these 2 wives. You have Songtsen Gampo in the middle and the 2 wives on each side of him, and even in the exilic Tibetan in India, you have some opera that has prepared also to show this part of history and how these 2 wives, one from Nepal, the other one from China, brought Buddhism to Tibet. And Tibetan and Chinese agreed to say that these 2 wives were really responsible for bringing Buddhism in Tibet. It not comes from India. First, it comes from these 2 wives, and then the Tibetan, Songtsen Gampo, sent translators to India to find texts that were translated in Tibetan languages and so on. But the very first beginning is here. We have also, it was of course a military kingdom, but also, as I just said, a Buddhist kingdom thanks to these 2 wives. And we've got, of course, another religion in Tibet before Buddhism that was called Bund, and we have struggled at the time that led to the end of the Tibetan Empire. We have competition between these 2 religions, but we have also competition coming from the Tibetan aristocrats who disagrees with the king who gave too much money to Buddhist monasteries. And so that leads to a big fragmentation in Tibet, and especially a fragmentation of powers. So during a lot of time to the 13th century, we have a very big fragmentation. Excuse me. And then in the 13th century, which people were the most successful? I'm sure you know. No, you don't want to answer, but I'm sure you know about it. Yes, the Mongols, of course, yes. The Mongols were very successful, and so they occupied all Asia and also to Europe, European territories. That was not Europe at the time still, but to today's Europe. And so obviously Tibet also was occupied by the Mongols, but not occupied in the way we think it was. So and that was actually the beginning of the chaplain-donor relationship, so the Choyun relationship that I would like you to know more about. And so in the 13th century we have a powerful Mongol Khan, Godan Khan, which was the grandson of Genghis Khan, and who plans to invade Tibet. So it was really a threat for the Tibetan territory. And then we have two options. If it depends if we look at Tibetan sources or Mongol sources. For the Tibetan, according to the Tibetan sources, it was Godan Khan who invited the Sakya master to go to Mongolia to negotiate a kind of peace before the Mongols arrived in Lhasa, or at least in central Tibet. And Sakya Pandita was very important because finally he spent a few years in Mongol and was very close to Godan Khan, to whom he transmitted some Buddhist teachings. And we considered, and Tibetan sources considered, that this is really the beginning of the Choyun relationship, when you have a master, so a Tibetan master, who give Buddhist teaching to a powerful warrior, and as a matter of fact, a Mongol Khan. But we have also another version coming from the Mongol sources, which said that Sakya Pandita was summoned at the Mongol court. And also he was recognized as a great master. He was mainly summoned and not invited. I mean, he was obliged to go there. I'm sorry. So when Sakya Pandita went to Mongolia, he brought with him two nephews, which were very, very important in Tibetan history. One was Pakpa, you have his name written here, because Pakpa later on became very close to Kublai Khan when Kublai Khan became the emperor of China. So that's very, very important. And his second nephew was Chakna, and himself he was recruited by the Mongol army. He learned Mongol and became a soldier. So this is a total different destinies, but both were nephews of Sakyapa. So now, why Sakyapa brought his two nephews? First, it was also a condition asked by the Mongols, because when they summoned someone, they also always wanted that this person bring with him family members to keep them as hostages, to be sure that when the person they summoned, when they will be back to their country or to their home, they will obey the Mongol rule. That was one of the ways the Mongol ruled Inner Asia. Another, from the Tibetan point of view, I'm sure you heard about the reincarnation and the Dalai Lama reincarnation or other big masters reincarnation, but in the Sakya school it was not the same. It was not a question of reincarnation. Sakya Pandita is always succeeded by one of his nephews. So we don't look for the reincarnation of the Sakya Pandita, but his nephew is systematically, at the days of Sakya Pandita, he becomes the head of the Sakya school. Is it alright? It is really related to the difference of succession within Tibetan schools. Okay, and for Sakya, the succession was from a master to his nephew, while in Gelugpa school, to which the Dalai Lama, the Panchen Lama, and other big lamas belongs to, it is through reincarnation. That means that when a master died, his followers will search for his reincarnation all over Tibet, and they will find several children. Then they will choose what they think will be the right one, and the right one they choose will become the successor of the one who died. Okay? Yeah. Thank you. But at the time it was not the case for Sakya Pandita. What is important anyway is that Godan Khan gave Tibet to the Sakya school. And so Sakya school became the leader of the Tibetan territory. But it was also against something else. So a census was made by the Mongol of the Tibetan population, and who said census said taxes, of course. And so at that time Tibet was Mongol, belongs to Mongolia, and and pay taxes to the Mongol Khan. Well, but that was really the way the Choyun relationship began. That was with the Mongol. Okay, the Mongol with Tibet. So we have here a link of, can we say, relationship, which is based not on war or coercion, but on spiritual teachings. Then, so we have the death of Sakya Pandita, and his successor was Pakpa. The death of Godan Khan, and his successor was Kubilai Khan, and so the relationship that was established between Sakya Pandita and Godan Khan became the one between Pakpa and Kubilai. And so we are here at another level, as Kubilai was the emperor of China from 1260 in Beijing. So, if we look at the sources again, we have various interpretations. For sure, Sakya Pandita and then Pakpa received political and religious powers from the Mongols, for the Tibetans. So it was a proof of the establishment of a strong religious link, so a Choyun relationship. But for the Mongols, it looked like the usual practice of allocating concrete territories among members of Genghis Khan's lineage. Okay, that means that the Mongol are actually as the habit when they conquer territory, and that was dated from Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan used to, at his days, the territory is divided between his various sons, and so he had many sons. And that's also why, actually, the Mongol Empire, like you have seen a few slides before, cannot resist to this division among sons who obviously fight between each other. And that causes also the end of the Mongol Empire. And so also what is important in the case of Tibet is that any Khan was named to govern Tibet. But the Mongols made the choice to rule Tibet indirectly through the Sakya hierarchy. Okay, and this is absolutely new in the realm of the Mongol. And this is why also we can consider that really we've got the establishment or the foundation of a Choyun relationship. So I don't speak about the lay, can we say, dynasty, Tibetan dynasty. I'm going through to the Gelugpa school, so the, I'm sorry, to when the Dalai Lama became the leader of Tibet. That was in 1642 until 1959. We have first an invitation. Also, as you know, of every religion is supposed to get new adherents, and so you have also in Tibetan Buddhism, like is Christianism, you have a kind of we can call them missionaries, and so every master in Tibetan Buddhism is supposed to travel to get new faithful one, new disciples, and also in order to get more offerings, actually, and to be able to be powerful enough to resist the attack coming from other schools. I hope it's okay. Because you cannot look at Tibet as a peaceful territory at all. You have always civil war in Tibet, either between lay people and religious people, or even between religious schools. Okay? Perfect. And then, so the most important Dalai Lama is the fifth one. So he went to power in 1642. He is supposed to have received political and religious powers from Gushri Khan, a Mongol Khan, who helped him to get power and to access the throne of Tibet. And so, but at the time of his enthronement, the fifth Dalai Lama only kept the spiritual powers. The military powers remained in the hands of Gushri Khan, the Mongol Khan. And the fifth Dalai Lama named regents to take care of the administrative stuff of his government. So at the very beginning, the Dalai Lama was not very powerful, I would say. But the fifth Dalai Lama wrote biographies, Tibetan biographies of the third and fourth Dalai Lama that install his dream as a very powerful person. I'm not sure anymore. Please ask me a question if you want to know more about anything. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, thank you. And then the fifth Dalai Lama did not choose to go outside of Lhasa. He decided to build a palace and to install his dream in Lhasa, so at the very same place as Songtsen Gampo, the first king of Tibet. And this is also very symbolic, but that shows also that he has a very big ambition towards his country and to be back to gain the whole territory of Tibet and not only a part. Okay. And then at the same time, in 1644, you have the foundation of the Qing dynasty, of course. So this is very close, new realm in Tibet, but also in mainland China, or in inner China, I'm sorry. I spent 7 years in Taiwan, and in Taiwan we talk of China as mainland China. I'm sorry. I have to correct myself. And then, so we have again, under the realm of the fifth Dalai Lama, we have again the biggest Tibetan territory as at the time of Songtsen Gampo. Well, alors, so we have now a Tibetan-Manchu relationship that lasted from the 7th to the 19th century. We have the fifth Dalai Lama, who recognized the first Manchu emperor, who was still in modern Eurasy, as an incarnation of Manjushri in 1633. I will come back to that. 1635, sorry. And we have the Manchu emperor who confirmed the Dalai Lama's political and religious powers when the Dalai Lama went to Beijing in 1652. And here again, in the sources, you have various versions of this visit. For some, it was the fifth Dalai Lama who wanted to go to Peking to honor the new emperor of China. But if you look at the Chinese sources, you will know that for the Chinese, it was the emperor who summoned the fifth Dalai Lama to come to China to show his mission. So we have different versions for everything when you look at the relationship between Tibet and China. Well, anyway, so we have, by the way, with the fifth Dalai Lama going to Beijing, the establishment of a new Choyun relationship, so a new chaplain-donor relationship. But it is not true at all that the Chinese understood this relationship as a chaplain-donor relationship. As for the Qing dynasty, it was more a sovereign vassal relationship than a spiritual disciple relationship. And so that's really a question of appreciation from each other. Then, from our point of view, from our Western point of view, we use two concepts to describe the relationship between Tibet and China at that time, either indirect rule. This is something a little bit, I think, not so satisfying, I think, as an impression, or a protectorate, and more, and actually the relations that was established between Tibet and China was a protectorate. You will understand it when I will talk about the way both parties practice the Choyun relationship. Okay, but the main characteristic is that the Dalai Lama or the religious authorities gave teaching to the Manchu emperor, and then the Manchu emperor sent his armies to defend Tibet, because Tibet had not a big army at the time. So we are really in the frame of a protectorate, at least on that point of view. So when we look at the empire of the Great Qing, we can see that it is very, very, very big and include Tibet at the time. You have here Qinghai, actually was Amdo, but really a big part of Tibet. You have Inner China in yellow on the right, and all the dependencies, as we call them, all the protectorate of China on that map, and that was very the biggest Chinese empire, I would say, or Beijing empire at the time. Well, that is for the history, and now I will come to the definition of the Choyun relationship through also the vocabularies and through the Buddhist way to understand it, and the hierarchy between the spiritual master and its protector. Okay? Bien. Alors, as you have seen, I always talk of Choyun and Yun Che, and so you've got two names actually in this expression. One is Chene, and the other one is Yundak. Chene is for the spiritual master, and Yundak is for the donor, so the one who protects the spiritual master and his cause. And so Choyun is a contraction of Chene and Yundak. Yun. This is something we do the Tibetans do with their names actually. Even for when you have a surname and name, we mix them together. No, well, it's not important anyway, but this is how it is defined. But then what is important also is how the Chinese finally, or in China, in Chinese sources, how this relationship, which is purely Tibeto-Mongol actually, is understood. And to find is if we have vocabulary that we can use in Chinese or that have been used in Chinese sources. And actually we have not. When we look at the Qing, for example, you will find that the emperor is defined within the relation as a sheju and is as a donor. But you have no specific name which is given to the Dalai Lama, for example, or for any other high spiritual master. I just spoke about the Dalai Lama, but you have a lot of relationship with others masters, Tibetan master. Anyway, just to simplify. So we have only the emperor, which is mentioned within the Qing archives. And I just find this one, so Taiyue, in the 1930s, so very, very late after the Qing dynasty. And that was a term that was used during the Republican period. by one of the Chinese representatives who went to Tibet in 1933. Anyway, so we have the Yondak Shiju Taiyue, which could be also understood as the Yondak, but which has been really used in the Chinese text to mean Cheyenne in the 1930s. But we have not the Chene. The Chene is not recognized actually within the Chinese sources or within the Chinese characters. When we look within dictionaries, we find very various definitions of these terms, and which also show very well the donor and the chaplain. This is what you've got it, Fruitien, Shezhou, 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 Gong, Gunda. Okay, but this is really contemporary translations that you will not find within the archives documents. Anyway, so now, so Cheyenne, we have the Chene, so the chaplain, which is the Lama and the spiritual master. But the spiritual master is also a Qing Bodhisattva. That means that the Tibetan master, especially the Dalai Lama, has spiritual and temporal power as well. This is why we call him Qing Bodhisattva. Then we've got the Yongdak, the donor, which in the Buddhist terminology is considered as the Chakravartin. So the Chakravartin is the emperor or the king who is recognized as the one who can bring peace all over the world. And that was why actually the Tibetan accepted to have relationship with the Manchu emperor, because they put it at a religious level, not at a political one. I will come back later to this, don't worry. And then, also, this is not, what is also very important, and this is why I quote all those people, this is not an exclusive relationship. This is not because the Dalai Lama has a Cheyenne relationship with the Emperor of China that he cannot have others Cheyenne relationship with other people. Okay? So the Emperor was only one of the donors for the Dalai Lama. So we have different relationships, but I will not go in the fifth Dalai Lama. Okay, we already talked about it. And so, but what we've got is really the Sakya masters with the Mongol emperors, and we've got also the Dalai Lama with the Manchu emperors. Okay, and each time the Sakya masters and the Gelugpa masters were at the head of the state in Tibet. And then, so the Buddhist terminology that is used to make this relationship acceptable, I would say, for the Tibetans, is that each one is recognized as a bodhisattva. Do you know what is a bodhisattva? No. So, according to Buddhism, you have different vehicles in the Buddhism. You have the small vehicle, the big vehicle, big vehicle, and then the tantric vehicle. And in the big is not, I don't know, foundation. How would you translate this? In the big vehicle, you have le grand véhicule in French, so maybe grande vehículo in Spanish.
Vehículo, gran vehículo.
Grande vehículo. Thank you. And it is, you have a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is someone who do not want to become a Buddha, but who stay on earth to help the others. Okay. And this is why, for example, we look for the reincarnation of Tibetan big masters, like the Dalai Lamas, because they refuse, also they have attained enlightenment. They do not want to go to the Buddha paradise, they want to stay on earth to help people. Okay? And when you have a bodhisattva, you belong to a lineage. And for example, I'm sure you know about it, the Dalai Lama belongs to the lineage of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. I'm sure you heard it. Yeah, I'm sure you read it. Okay, and so, is it okay?
Yeah.
And so we have, according to the Tibetan sources and the way the Tibetans explain things, Songtsen Gampo, so the first king of Tibet, Papa, and the Dalai Lama, all three of them were incarnation of Avalokiteshvara. Okay. So, and then we've got all others. I will skip the middle line. Kubilai Khan and Tianlong were considered as Manjushri, as an emanation or incarnation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Okay, I will explain. Why Avalokiteshvara? Because we have a myth on Tibet that Avalokiteshvara was at the origin of the birth of Tibetan people first. And then why Manjushri for the emperor in Beijing? Because the North traditionally in Buddhism is considered as the land of Manjushri, and because Wutaishan, which is in Shanxi province in China, is considered as the seat of Manjushri, and so the Manchu who were very far away in the north were considered as Manchu. And one theory says that Manchu dynasty is called Manchu because of this relationship with Manjushri Bodhisattva. Okay? Because far before, in 1635, when the Dalai Lama exchanged correspondence with Durasi, he used to call Durasi as Manju, so Manjushri Bodhisattva. And so there is one, but this is one theory only, yeah, that could explain the name of the Manchu dynasty. Okay? Okay. But if we look at the Dalai Lama and the emperor, then we have a Dalai Lama which is a spiritual and temporal ruler of Tibet. And in Beijing, then we've got the same thing. We've got an emperor who has the temporal power, but also the spiritual power. And so you can imagine, you can imagine how difficult it is when both met, and how they could behave either as a bodhisattva, either as a temporal ruler. And all the questions we've got within sources, within archive documents about this. And actually it's very difficult to be determined. So I have prepared some examples. These are representations that have been made in Tibet, which are inside the Potala, about the meeting between the fifth Dalai Lama and the first emperor. As you can see here, apparently both are at the same age. Because in Tibetan culture, the way people mark their status, hierarchical status, is to wait to sat. On a chair or on a chair. Forgotten. On the throne, yeah, very high or very low. And this is really a way to know where you are in a spiritual point of view. And so here you can see that in 1652 the emperor and the fifth Dalai Lama met and are represented at the same level. Okay. Now, if we go to the 1908, when the 13th Dalai Lama went to Peking, also the situation was quite different. You have here a formal meeting with the Guangxu Emperor, and you can see that the Dalai Lama is sitting lower than the Emperor, for example. And we have another one that you have here, which is here, of the Dalai Lama kneeling in front of the 30th Emperor.
ceci, emperor, empress, ceci, empress, yes. And so here you can see actually the submission, I would say, of the Dalai Lama in front of both. But we are here, and what we can say here also, but this is my interpretation, is that this is informal meeting, and that maybe we can speak about the lay temporal rulers meeting, not spiritual meeting, because we've got another one, which one, I'm sorry, the slide is not so clear, but where you have Ceci Empress with the Dalai Lama at the same age, for example. But here we can see also that we are in front of Buddhist scene, Buddhist ritual that is practiced by the Dalai Lama himself. So this is really something we always meet when we look at the archives, this difference of age and the importance given by each party to this difference. Another thing which is interesting with these pictures, with this painting, is that they have been done by Tibetans and for the Potala Palace, so the palace of the Dalai Lama in Lhasa. And they dare to reproduce themselves as being inferior to the empress or to the emperor Wangsu. And I think this is also quite interesting to see finally that maybe there was a kind of manipulation coming from the Tibetans who dare to show that kind of relationship, but who disagree with this interpretation of the relationship. But okay. Now, from practical perspective, how this China relationship was implemented at the time during the Qing dynasty. Again, we have Dharma teaching given by the spiritual master, the Dalai Lama, and in compensation, the protector, so the Qing emperor, will give and protect the territory with the military protection, will protects, names the monasteries, will protect the masters, protects monastic schools, and also gives political power. So, which is a lot of things that the Dalai Lama, or the spiritual authority of Tibet, received. Now, if we go within the details, we have the military protection, which works very well till the Nepalese incursion at the end of the 18th centuries. But then this military protection disappeared at the beginning of the 20th century. So we can say that at that time the Qing dynasty was not so powerful as before, which is true. The population was too large for the government to control them, to control it. We have many things, but anyway, from the beginning of the 20th century, the Manchu did not protect anymore Tibetan territory and the Gelugpa school, which is something important. Then there was an administrative protection through a person called an Amban, which is an imperial commissioner who stayed in Tibet from the beginning of the 18th century to the end of the Qing dynasty, with various powers, and the Amban's power became more and more important across time, to the point that the Ambans were very active within the Tibetan government from the end of the 18th century. Then the emperors grant titles to these masters, different titles, as you can see, depending on the dynasty. He also protected monasteries and give donation to these monasteries. And during the Yuan and Qing dynasty, so the Mongol dynasty and the Manchu dynasty, Beijing was considered as the capital of Tibetan Buddhism, which is also very important, because they introduced themselves as the protector of this religion, and they also built a lot of Tibetan monasteries in Beijing. Another thing which is very important, and especially for Tibetan, is that interior sponsorship of Buddhist books with the Tibetan canon. In the Tibetan canon, you have the Komgyo, which corresponds to the Buddha teaching, so what the Buddha said when taught Buddhism, and then you have the Tangyo, the commentaries of the Buddha talks, which are also very important, especially for Tibetans. And the most important thing that an emperor can do is to give money to organize the translation of these classical books of Tibetan Buddhism. And so we have translation from almost every emperor in Beijing. We have also the 5th Dalai Lama giving some translation to the emperor, and so on. We have Mongol translation, which is also very important, and we have at least a Manchu translation of the Buddha's teaching commentaries, which this action looks very, very important, especially for the relationship, the good relationship among people of Inner Asia, who have a common belief in Tibetan Buddhism. This is what is very important. In Lhasa, so you've got the construction of the Yonghe-gong in Beijing. Have you been to Beijing before already? Yes. Did you visit the Yonghe-gong? No, you should go there. And so you have the Yonghe-gong, which is still I'm sure you know it. Yeah. So you have this monastery is very, can we say, vivid, lively today. So you can go there, you can visit it, and you have a lot of today Chinese practitioners who go there and to make devotion. This is very, very nice place in Beijing. So anyway, you have a Yonghe-gong built in Beijing. You have also Mongolian reincarnated master, which were recognized in Beijing in the Yonghe-gong. And you have also the building of the Potala, and the Potala is the palace of the Dalai Lama, and the Tashenpo Monastery is the palace of the Panchen Lama, the second highest authority within the Gelugpa school. And you have replica in Chengde. You can see them here. So this is in Chengde in China and here in Tibet. And you have the same things for the Tashenpo Monastery in Chengde and in Tibet. And then, of course, we have relationship at the highest level of both governments with the highest authorities, and either Mongolian, either Manchu, either Tibetan. But also, what about more, I would say, aristocrats people, but also from people from Mongolia or from Manchuria or from Tibet. And the best way for Mongolians and Manchu to protect Tibet, it's to practice pilgrimage, to go on pilgrimage to Tibet. And so you've got thousands of pilgrims every year, and you also have a lot, if you have raids, you are not French, I'm sorry, I don't know about Spanish writer. I was thinking about Pierre Loti, who wrote a very beautiful book about the situation in Beijing at the very beginning of the 20th century, and who described very well all those Mongol caravans with thousands of camels who went to Beijing, who make Beijing dirty and everything. It was very impressive the way Pierre Loti described those caravans, and the way they were important, especially for trade. Because of course they exchange gifts with Tibetan people or with the Manchu in Beijing, but all the way actually exchanges happened between all those populations, all the pilgrimages as well as the tribute mission during the Ming Dynasty, for example, were occasion opportunity to make trade and to gain money, of course, but also to exchange gifts. And this is why you can find in Mongolia, in Tibet, or in Manchu products coming from every era of Inner Asia. And that is very, very important. Another thing which is very important also for Tibet is that by this exchange of this, by this arrival of products, the Dalai Lama or other people use, or the big master use to practice, to perform a ritual for sharing wealth. And that is a way also for the common population to get rich or to get some objects they would not get anyway, otherwise. I'm sorry. And then also to make the link between all these three big population, you have this road to pilgrimage. That's even the 13th Dalai Lama calls the Golden Bridge because of all the products exchanged on that road. By the way, why finally the Manchu emperors were so interested with Tibet? Of course, we have, I will come to this, the following slide, I'm sorry. But what is also very important is that the emperor, also they are in Beijing, also they said, being the protector of Tibet, finally they don't know that much about Tibet, the Tibetan way of life, or what they have to do with Tibet. And actually there was a Tibetan master called the Jongtiar Putuktu that you have here, the Jongtiar Rinpoche, who was very important in this action to protect Tibet, to build Tibetan monastery and to promote Tibetan culture within the empire. And he was very, very active man within the Manchu court. And then the action, why finally? For China, Tibetan Buddhism can provide supernatural powers through tantric initiation, help for the submission of the Mongols, but there were also a real interest in Buddhism coming from the Manchu emperors. And for Tibet, it was a way to establish a kind of, or to perform a kind of Buddhist government, or a Buddhist governance allowing religion and politics to mix together within a common government. And this is why also, and the way they saw the emperor as really someone which is half political, half spiritual. Actually, like themselves, they were this way. What is also very important is that the Tibetan Buddhist world that unite finally Mongolia, Manchuria, and Tibet is not to be understood in terms of frontier, borders, or territory. It is very, really a Buddhist world, but not defined through treaties, political boundaries, that kind of thing. It is very, very important. In Mongolia, for example, we have, of course, the Genghis Mongol world with territory divided and the Tibetan Buddhist one. So we have juxtapositions of two modes of governance. The Mongol pilgrims were agents of economic and cultural interaction among Mongols, Tibetan, Chinese, and Manchu, which is a lot, I would say. And actually, Mongol and Qing dependence on trade and Tibetan dependence on pilgrimage encouraged the maintenance of peace in the region. And so, for sure, if peace remained during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century in that era, it was probably because of this Tibetan Buddhist world. Okay, that has been established. Okay. Now, so we have seen what happened during when we have an emperor and a Tibetan spiritual hierarch, but what happened when we have no more an emperor in Beijing? That is another question. And so we are going to the modern history and to see what happened to this Choyun relationship, actually. So at the end of the Manchu dynasty and the beginning of the Republic of China, you all know about the 1911 Chinese Revolution and how also this 1911 revolution developed in Inner Asia and especially in Tibet, for example. So I will not give details now. But what is important to know is that the 13th Dalai Lama actually said that with the end of the emperor, the Choyun relationship is no more necessary, because the relationship was established between the Dalai Lama lineage and the emperor in Beijing. And now that there was no more emperor, it is impossible to continue with the chaplain-donor relationship. Okay. But we have several attempts by China to regain control of Tibet. And so, I'm sorry, I forgot something. Because of this declaration, so the Dalai Lama became, became independent de facto. It was not recognized on the international scene, but it became independent de facto. And we can really say that from 1912 to 1949, which is the year of the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese army, Tibet was independent. So this is, I would say, the only period we can say for sure that Tibet was independent. But that is my point of view, of course. Then, because of this, the China or Beijing disagree with this independent Tibet and would like to gain control again on the Tibetan territory. And so various attempts were made during Republican China, so that means during 1912 to 1949. Okay, but we really have to keep in mind that Tibet was independent during that period. China, so you know about the organization of China at that time also. It was very messy with warlords, with provinces declaring independence from Beijing and everything. So it was very difficult to control the territory of Inner China first. So it was really possible to begin something new when the Nanjing government was founded in 1928 in Nanjing. And as soon as the government was founded in 19, new policy began to be implemented towards Tibet, Mongolia, and Manchuria. And it was decided to regain these territories. And so this is why, at that time, the Nanjing government created what we call the Mongolian and Tibetan Affairs Commission, the MTAC, which was supposed to send people to do field surveys, inspection tours, and especially applied again the Choyun relationship, so gave title to Tibetan masters there. Okay, and so we have also reviews regarding these border eras, which talk about the way to develop these eras, but also the way to promote the Sanminjui, the three principles of the people of Sun Yat-sen within these regions. Then, as the funerals of the 13th Dalai Lama, the MTAC sent an emissary, which was his director at the time, called Huang Musong, that you have here in his military suit. But also you can see him in Tibetan Buddhist monk robe. I use this picture just to show you how the Chinese officials were ready to use any mean to get back Tibet into inner China. So that was the MTAC actions. Then we have other actions coming from Tibetan masters who fled from Tibet because they disagreed with the 13th Dalai Lama policy. And one of the examples was the nice Panchen Lama, who left Tibet because the Dalai Lama wanted to impose new taxes on his monastery. And the ninth Panchen Lama declared he will not be able to give so much taxes to the government. So he decided to leave Tibet and to first go to Mongolia. And the first aim, he said, was to establish new chaplain donor, new Chogyam relationship with Mongols, in order to have gifts or money or arms from them to help him to pay the taxes. Anyway, he left. This is he. He left Tibet. And he was with very close to the Nanjing government, very close to Chiang Kai-shek, and he gave very important Buddhist teachings also in China to members of the Nanjing government, but also to lay people. And as a reward, the Nanjing government protected him, gave him a lot of money, gave him also titles and a role within the Nanjing government. So there were really a Chogyam relationship that was established. But unfortunately, the ninth Panchen Lama never got back to Tibet and died just at the border of the Sino-Tibetan border because the Tibetan government denied him the right to come back with Chinese followers, with the Chinese arms, with the Chinese technology. They were afraid that the Panchen Lama would make a kind of coup d'etat in Tibet. So, but that was an attempt to re-establish a Chogyam relationship on behalf of the ninth Panchen Lama. Now we have also, at that time, a lot of autonomous movements, especially in Inner Mongolia. And as the ninth Panchen Lama was there almost 9 years during his exile from Tibet, the Mongols used him to influence Mongol opinion towards these autonomous movements. So again, we see to grant or to thank the Panchen Lama for his help, they grant him monasteries, a lot of goods, a lot of arms and everything. Okay, so we have still, despite this, the independence of Tibet at the time, it looks that the Tibetan cannot move or do action or act without or outside of this concept of Chogyam. Okay? And so when, for example, when the ninth Panchen Lama left Tibet, the only thing he think about is to create new Chogyam relationship. He cannot present himself as a simple master who will give teaching and then leave. No, he will receive something after giving spiritual teaching. Is that all right? Another thing which is important during this Republican period is that Tibet was closed, and we have very few foreigners who went to Tibetan territory, and especially in central Tibet. And so we can ask who were the chaplains from 1912 to 1949, especially for the monasteries, for Tibetan monasteries. And according to one colleague, it was the Tibetan government who became the chaplain of the Tibetan monasteries inside Tibet. But I'm really not sure of that, because on the contrary, the Tibetan government expect to get some monies or some taxes, some new taxes from the Buddhist monasteries. So I'm not sure at all. So we don't know actually how Buddhist monasteries developed during that period for those who were in central Tibet. Now I talk a little bit about the Qing era. This is another autonomous movement that happened during this period. Just for you to, you want me to go back? Just for you to see how Qing was divided into various polities. You remember the three regions? You have Central Tibet, Amdo, and Qing, and actually each region has its own model of administrative organization. I will stop that. And so in Qing, you have different polities, different kingdom. We change which fought all the time. We declare to be part of China or to be part of Tibet. It depends where their interest was. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then at the time, still in around the 1930s, 1932, we've got a Tibetan from this era of Qing who tried to create a unified Qing. So, and to use the Chinese policy to be authorized by the Chinese government to act like an independent warlord, I would say. Okay. And this is also another way to implement a kind of Churian relationship by using the arms of the Chinese against them. Also, this is not obvious. But we have new political alliances. And then, I am almost finished. I would like to listen to your questions then. And then in 1949, of course, we have the foundation of the People's Republic of China, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army who enters Tibet. So the Tibet territory was divided. Part of Qing was included within Yunnan province and Sichuan province. Amdo became Qinghai, and finally Tibet, central Tibet, which you can see here, became Tibet. For the Chinese and for a lot of people today, Tibet is really limited to the central Tibet now. So again, what happened to this Churian relationship during the People's Republic of China? China controls the reincarnation, the process for the search of reincarnation. You have probably heard about the Panchen Lama's case, and also Dalai Lama. Renovate monasteries in Tibet in the 1984-1985. But that stops when Tibetans demonstrated in the street of Lhasa. In Tibet, from Tibetan, you have a lot of masters coming mainly from the Qing era who give teaching to the Chinese, and now you have a lot of Chinese people who were followers of Tibetan Buddhism. And you have also big centers, especially in Kham province, where you have Chinese nuns, Chinese monks living there, but also lay people who are just followers of Tibetan masters. And now you have a typical Choyun relationship between this Tibetan master, spiritual master, and the lay people, Chinese lay people. And in exilic Tibet, you have what we call the sponsorship of Tibetan children, of Tibetan monastery, which is also a new way to apply a Choyun relationship, not with people from Inner Asia, but with people from the West. The last one. Conclusion. Alors, what is the chaplain-donor relationship? Is it a protectorate, a kind of protectorate? As we would say, yes. It is well expressed in Tibetan, Mongol, and Manchu sources, but not in sources written in Chinese. My last question would be, do today's nation-state relationship prevent chaplain-donor relation? Voilà. Muchas gracias for your attention.
Thank you, Profesor Jaogu. Muchas gracias, profesora. Muchas gracias. Turno de preguntas. La podéis hacer en inglés y si no en español.
So you said that the relation between the Qing Empire, the Qing Empire, and Tibet was called a protectorate, but you also talk about a different term, a different word to define it. What was it, and what's the difference between protectorate and the other one?
Alors, the other one is indirect rule. This is a specific term just to say that the Qing Emperor does not have any power inside Tibet, and that the Tibetan rule their country by themselves, despite of this Manchu influence or protection.
So I have two questions related to the first part of the conference. So the first one is before Sakya Pandita went to Mongolia, which were the religious and spiritual beliefs in Mongolia, and how this Buddhism affected, the nation, the new beliefs. And the second one, the second question, is related to the era before 1912. Okay, so because I have the impression that Tibet has always been influenced by Manchu Empire and also Mongolian Empire, and weren't there any insurrectional movement or any people eager to be autonomous, or was it always because of the religion, or were there more factors to this situation? And after all that, after 1912, then yes, there are movements that want that independence.
Okay, thank you. And regarding the first question, in Mongolia you have shamanism, and also the same way to honorate or to respect local deities or divinities coming from the soul, for example, or the cult of the mountain, which are really common to the also with the Tibetan previous Tibetan Gun religion. That was a Tibetan religion before Buddhism came to Tibet. I don't think that there is any influence or bad influence after the Mongols adopted Tibetan Buddhism for their country or for their people, because the Mongol kept the same organization, Genghis Khan organization, with a division of territories between his family members. So we have really two worlds. We live in can we say in parallel, or but we coexist very well, actually. So there is no influence of one over the other, I think. I forgot the second question.
So it's related to this sentence. You said that Tibetan Buddhism world needs to be understood as relationship but not.
Alors, during the reign of the Dalai Lama, so the Gelugpa school, so from the mid-17th century to the end of the 19th centuries, some problems occurred, of course, especially because of the Mongols first, who react against the Manchu emperor, but also because of some Dalai Lama who were not so obedient towards the emperor. And so some, especially one of them was exiled from Tibet and so summoned to go to Beijing to explain his behavior. It was the sixth one, I would say, the sixth Dalai Lama has been searched and has been recognized as the reincarnation of the fifth one. The fifth one, as you understood, was very important in the history of Tibet and also to write all the bases regarding the institution of the Dalai Lama. But the sixth was absolutely not interested with Buddhist teachings and with Buddhist study. And what is like is to drink and to have women affairs, I would say. And so that was very, in French we would say, ça fait désordre. It was very, totally impossible in the eyes of the Manchu emperor that someone with such a spiritual power who has been recognized officially can act this way. And so he was deported to Beijing, but finally he died onwards. So we have that kind of example, and after that, actually, the Manchu emperor were very cautious with all the members of the lineages, and some of them were kept on the boundary to make sure they will submit to the Manchu emperor orders and everything. So, of course, it was not a peaceful relationship. Chogyam does not mean that the relationship was always peaceful and without problems. Yes. Yeah.
Aquí, la señorita primero y luego el caballero.
In 2014, Angela Merkel gives to Xi Jinping a maps without Tibet. In the maps don't appear
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Angela Merkel gave Xi Jinping a map.
Angela Merkel gave to Xi Jinping, yes,
a map without area of Tibet area.
Okay.
Do you know if this action has a trouble between the relationship China, Tibet, and Germany?
I really did not know. I didn't know this story. No, I don't know.
I thought it was in 2014, more or less.
2014, yes. Yeah. But that's interesting that anyway, today, Tibet is part of China. So it's strange actually, it depends of what was was it an old map or do you know more
Yes,
about
it
it?
is.
Ah, oui, d'accord. So mid-18th century map. Okay.
Es un mapa de 1740.
Mm.
And in a previous paper appeared that China has controlled the reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I do it?
Alors,
This question I'm thinking about.
this is a big question.
¿Cómo el gobierno chino puede tener el control de la reencarnación?
Alors, so this is a very big question, very important question, as the Dalai Lama is now 85 years old, as you know. Alors, so it happens that at the end of the 18th century, after the Gurkha incursions in Tibet, the Tianlong Emperor implemented a new policy for Tibet. And this is when actually the role of the Ambang became bigger and it is when he implemented a special policy for the search of reincarnation. That means that first you've got the traditional Tibetan test to find a human reincarnation. Then this, I think I talk a little bit about it. No, do you want me to give details or not? Alors, so when a master died, it happens that very often he left signal or information about where his reincarnation will be born. But you can also have natural signs, like, for example, you have a master who died, his body can be kept alive, don't decay, cannot decay during 49 days, and so he's in the posture of meditation, and suddenly his head could turn to one direction or another. And that is interpreted by Tibetans as a sign to where to find the next reincarnation. But he could also say something about it. He could say, for example, the sixth Dalai Lama, so who died on his way to Beijing, so he died in Newtown, and at that time he wrote a poem saying, "I will be back in Newtown," and his reincarnation was found in Newtown. For example, so you have that kind of sign. Then you have also oracles within the Tibetan government who goes to a special lake to have a vision. So they stay a long time above the water, doing meditation and have a vision. And for example, that was the case for the 14th Dalai Lama. The oracle saw a roof with turquoise tiles, and so they immediately think that he will be reborn on the border of China, because you have no tradition of turquoise tiles roof in Tibet. So that can, and then you have people from the entourage of the dead master who go everywhere in Tibet searching for new children, sometimes in disguise, just to not be recognized as high masters from Lhasa or things like that, as that was the case for the Dalai Lama also. And for example, the team who searched for the 14th Dalai Lama arrived in his village, and as soon as the young Dalai Lama saw them, he expressed himself in the language of Lhasa. Well, he was from Amdo, and Amdo they spoke another Tibetan. So that was the first sign that he was someone extraordinary, or at least someone who has a previous life in Lhasa. And then, so the team bring all the children to Lhasa, where the last tests are done. And for one of the tests is to choose one object among others, but this object belonged to the previous reincarnation. And so the master, the boy has to find the good object. Well, so this is a traditional way, and you have also others oracles and everything. But anyway, this is the traditional Tibetan way. At the end of the 18th century, the Manchu had another test, which is the drawing of lots from a golden urn. Did you hear about it? No. And so that after the traditional Tibetan tests are finished, the Tibetans have to put the name of, for example, the 3 or 2 young boys that looks to be the right one. And then they have 7 days of prayers, of anything, and after a small moment of time, one of the ivory stick will get out from this urn, and that will give the right successor, actually. And so this is this condition that the actual Chinese government want to implement for the for the search for the Dalai Lama. Yeah. And they have already implemented it in the 1985 for the Panchen Lama. Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really insightful. And my question was, because all throughout the presentation, it caught my attention that Tibet has always looked up to Beijing to establish those sort of relationships you talked about. And I mean, Tibet and Beijing are really far away, so I wonder why didn't Tibet sort of gravitate towards India, which in many ways they share a lot of cultural affinities.
Yes, thank you for your question. And of course, yes, the road is very long and it takes sometimes 1 year from someone departed from Lhasa to go to Beijing. We have to be aware of that. And so when the Panchen Lama, when the Dalai Lama left, for example, in 1904, because of the invasion of the British, he left in 1904 and came back in 1910. Because the road was very long. He stayed, and he always took also this opportunity to reinforce his powers in the Tibetan areas where he never went. Okay, so we have this. And then in India at the time you have the Muslims, and from the 12th century, and Muslim religion was superior to Buddhist religion. It was no more a Buddhist country. And what we say today is that the Tibetans, because they are in exile in India, they bring back Buddhism in India. And you have also Hinduism, of course, in India. But the biggest problem from the 12th century was the Muslim. For Buddhism to be in India.
¿Alguna cuestión más? Bueno, pues entonces, thank you very much, Professor.
No, thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much.